G'day. It's Nick here and welcome to Wicked Wildlife. And today, I want to introduce you to Gary. And Gary is a Mertens Water Monitor, basically an aquatic goanna. So stick around. Pretty dangerous. For more Wicked Wildlife in town, this is Tully, our resident member to our wild family here. Australian have a look. We've got two different other snakes with us today. I hope you have a great one. Take care. So Australia is well and truly the land of the goannas or monitor lizards. Out of about 60 species in the world, we've got give or take 27 of them. And they occupy pretty much the entirety of the continent other than Tasmania and the very bottom part of Victoria. Anywhere it's warm enough for eggs to incubate, you'll find a goanna of some description or another. Now they're not all big, but out of those 27 or so species, we've got 4 sort of semi-aquatic goannas. And this guy here is probably the best known. It's the Mertens Water Monitor. So this guy's found across the north coast and a little bit down the east coast, and these guys live generally along freshwater environments. In other parts of the north coast, you've got the Mangrove Monitor, living sort of saline environments, the Rusty Monitor, who's the little guy of the 4, and the Mitchell's Water Monitor. And these guys are all pretty well identified as being semi-aquatic because of this laterally compressed tail, basically flat, that they used to swim like a crocodile, tuck their legs in and scoot along under the water. So Gary here, like just about all goannas, are completely carnivorous. He'll essentially eat anything that moves that he can get his mouth around. And most goannas don't even care if it's moving or not. Those guys will eat carrion. But this guy here is hunting along the water's edge and in the water, and he finds his prey with this long forked tongue. Just like a snake, he uses it to smell. Now the benefit of forked tongue is essentially he can smell directions. The left side's going to pick up anything that headed left, the right side's going to pick up anything that headed right. He can smell in stereo, which is pretty cool. So once these guys are adults, these guys get up to 1.5 meters long. So something the size of Gary here isn't going to have too many predators outside things like crocodiles, human beings, or maybe dingoes. But these guys do have another threat that they share with pretty much all the goannas, and that'd be a dietary choice, the cane toad. Unfortunately, 100 and something years ago, some Australians thought it'd be a great idea to bring this poisonous toad to Australia. Now, toads naturally are going to live in fairly damp, moist environments, which where, surprise, surprise, you're gonna find these semi-aquatic goannas. Now, while toads have been absolutely devastating for the environment thus far, it's been pretty interesting that what we've noticed is as toads move across, it's usually the biggest toads that reach an area first. And unfortunately, the biggest toads are the toads most likely to kill any predator that tries to eat them. There's been some interesting opinions shared lately that maybe we should be releasing little toads ahead of them. And the reason being is, toads are gonna get there sooner or later, and these small toads are essentially a non-lethal dose. We're hoping that maybe if this guy eats a tiny baby toad, he gets a sick stomach, and just like you on a Saturday night after the big night before, decide, I don't want to do that again. So hopefully these guys might learn to leave the toads alone. Once these guys adjust to the toads, they might have a huge reduction in numbers, but the ones that survive manage to cling on. And so far, while toads have been absolutely devastating, there hasn't been any extinctions that we can say are solely due to toads. So while this guy's managed to cling on thus far, unfortunately his smaller cousin, the Mitchell's Water Monitor, hasn't done so well. In the last 12 to 18 months, was put on the critically endangered species list. They've suffered a reduction in numbers of up to 97%. Now, it's not only these guys that are being affected by cane toads. Interestingly, their other cousin, the Mangrove Monitor, was actually released onto islands in Indonesia in the South Pacific during the Second World War by Japanese soldiers to eradicate rats. And when the US soldiers arrived, the way that they decided to get rid of these Mangrove Monitors was to release cane toads. So these toxic animals have been released on purpose, not only in Australia, but all around the world. And wherever it happens, they affect the carnivores that feed on them. So all things considered, I think this guy, as all of our Australian animals should be, is an absolute icon. He's kind of like a native velociraptor. I think he's brilliant. But if you guys want to learn more about him, Gary here is actually an educational ambassador. He lives here at Animals Anonymous, another demonstrator who's a friend of mine, and he's always appearing on their Facebook page. So please check them out. If you want to make a difference for these guys in their home range and you happen to live up north, check out your local land care group. There's all sorts of people having initiatives like toad busting, collecting these toads and removing from the environment. You can provide habitat for them. There's all sorts of great ways that you can help make a little difference. Other than that, guys, as always, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, be nice to wildlife, have a good one and take care.